and organizations, thank you all for coming. One person had signed up on Facebook, so this is a great turnout. Thank you. And the one person was me. So thanks for coming. And you know, we're really in a great position today to start this neighbor up week that we've created. The county has endorsed and the city council has endorsed, and we're in a great position because we've got this wonderful young woman here who is going to speak to us about neighborhoods, government, and democracy. And I think Brandy had in mind she was going to speak for a few minutes, and then we're going to open it up for conversation.
Yeah.
All right. And I suspect, I know most of you, so I suspect you all know Brandy.
I'll introduce myself.
Very well. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I think I'll stand so everyone can see me. I'm not hidden by those in the back. My name is Brandy Williams. I am a former member of the Colorado Springs City Council. And I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy days and weeks this week, as it is tax season, so I'm going to remind you of that. And I want to thank Dave and Kono for arranging this week and really trying to do his best to put neighborhoods at the forefront. A little bit more about myself. I was born and raised right here in Colorado Springs, graduated from Rampart High School. Could not choose between math and science, so I just became an engineer and put the two of them together. I left Colorado Springs and went to Pittsburgh and graduated from Carnegie Mellon University. But after not seeing the sun for 4 years, I decided I needed to come home because we have far more sunshine than thankfully the rest of the country gives us credit for. It's beautiful here. I came back here in 2001. I was a practicing engineer for 10 years. In 2011, I was elected to the Colorado Springs City Council as an at-large member. And in 2013, sadly, I was not re-elected, and now I currently work for El Paso County in an engineering capacity. And Dave has invited me here today to talk about neighborhoods, democracy, which we'll touch on a little bit, and government. And one of the things I had the pleasure of doing while I was on City Council was meeting elected officials from across the country. They would have different gatherings nationwide. And in those conversations, I found the most successful communities really had strong neighborhoods. They really had people who identified with that community first, where they had pride in their neighborhood, they knew their neighbors, and they trusted their neighbors. They had really built that relationship. We have a specific challenge here in Colorado Springs because we have a transient population. So really keeping that cohesiveness is left to those who aren't transient and who are actually staying and planted here. But I can tell, at least from my generation and over the generations, it's not so much your neighbors that you really coalesce with and bond with, but it's the people who are in whatever specific organization you belong to. So I think Dave and Kono has a particular challenge of kind of moving neighborhoods back to where we came from. And I really applaud some of the developers in our community. They're trying to build more of those traditional neighborhoods that have the porches out front and have those spaces where you can congregate. Because I know when I lived in my subdivision, people would come home, shut the garage door, go inside, and disappear. So much so that my neighbor's mom, who visited quite frequently, didn't even think anyone lived in my house. We were out front talking, she's like, nobody lives there anyway, but it's really kept up nicely. I said, I live there. Well, I never see you. You go and shut the garage door and go eat dinner, you don't really come out a whole lot. So I really applaud them for that. And the link between neighborhoods and democracy and government is really that when I was elected in 2011, I received 33,000 votes. I can guarantee you I did not meet 33,000 people. So there are avenues and areas out there to really bring all of that together. And one thing that needs to happen is kind of the synergy between elected officials and candidates and neighborhoods. There are individual organizations that host forums, but even after you're elected, it'd be nice to go into a neighborhood space where everyone feels comfortable and knows each other and really introduce yourself, try and explain what's going on in the government, and then have those people tell the story to their neighbors. It's really kind of like a phone tree. If I can pass the information on to this person, they can say, oh, I've met Brandy, I know her, I know more than the fact that she just has a hand, which is one thing I heard when the presidential election was coming around. Most things you only know about politicians is shaking their hand. And that's it. Unless you spend extra time with them, you really aren't able to get to know them. And specifically to Colorado Springs and to the nation at large, we have a representative democracy, which means that the community comes together and elects the 9 representatives that sit on city council. Currently, you can vote for 4. I'm not an advocate of that. I'm more of an advocate that you either vote for a majority or a supermajority of those people that are electing you, because right now you don't even get to vote for a majority, but save that for question and answer. So being able to come together and know more of your elected officials is very important. Okay, first question. How many of you knew there was an election last week? Yeah, lots of people did not. And how many people voted? Good, this is a great group. Now, if you each go out there and get 100 people who do the same thing you did, you could increase those voting numbers. So, one way to kind of set the stage for governments is the analogy I came up with this morning was the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl, you had the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, and they came together and played a game, and then whoever scored the most points won. Well, how elections work is 2 individuals come together, but there's nothing that happens between them. The only thing that happens is their fans vote. So whoever has the most fans would win the Super Bowl. It'd be a completely different Super Bowl, and they would be catering to every unique individual. But that's how the government plays out, because sadly, whoever has the most fans wins. And that's kind of where we are today, and then that person takes the seat and makes the decisions that really affects our day-to-day lives, which is why I think local government is one of the most important branches, I guess not a branch per se, but layers of government, because it affects your utility rates, it affects your potholes, it affects a lot of things that you deal with every day. So I think that Dave is doing a great job to strengthen neighborhoods, to hopefully strengthen that gap between elected officials and residents, so they feel like they have a voice, and so that those people that are in elected office really feel like they're connecting to the community and they're not making decisions in a vacuum. Kind of what you're looking for?
That's great. You want to stop there?
I'm good.
Thank you for your compliment. I wanted to point out that we have 3 members of the Kono board here. Bruce is doing the video taping or videography or whatever. Diane Butlak is over there in the red or purple vest, and Molly Mary is not far from her in the so, this has been a work by all of us to get this going. Thank you very much. So I think anyone want to have a question or make a comment?
Well, if you graduate from Rampart, you're somewhere around my neighborhood, and probably know my son. But I bought my house when Flintridge was the last traffic light on North Academy. So I've had it a while. And at the time, the homeowners were primarily young engineers and Air Force officers and such. And I love my neighborhood, and I do know my neighbors, and it's quiet and lovely, except that it has declined visually. Sidewalks are a problem, fences that are kind of falling down and looking tacky. What's the solution to that?
I think it's reinvention. I think there's a cycle that neighborhoods go through, and like you said, it starts out vibrant and lovely and wonderful, and then as the years go by, it either falls into decline, or people who used to live there have passed away and the home passes on to their children, and it really needs to go through that next cycle. And I think one of the ways that people are attempting to prevent that as we go through in the future is by having the HOAs that really govern the housing developments, the fences, the streets, the colors, everything. And that's personal preference at this point. Some people like the HOA communities where everything is decided for them, and some people don't like the HOA communities that tell them when you can and cannot have your garage up. So in your instance, one option was, do you have an HOA?
No. As far as I know, way back in 1976, there was some sort of neighborhood regulations about your vehicles had to be parked inside the garage door closed, some things like that. But there's apparently nothing of that nature, and I don't know, I mean, HOAs have gotten a bad reputation.
You are correct.
So how would one go about ever convincing several hundred people to initiate and create one?
If you could explain to them the importance of it, I think that would help, because those declining properties are reducing your property values, and you have enough like-minded people that don't want their property values to reduce, and coalesce around that and try and bring people together. I'm not an HOA expert, so I don't know if you have to have 100% or just a majority, but I know there's a certain tipping point.
Sort of depends on your covenants.
Yeah, on whether or not you can inflict that on those in your particular area.
So is there any literature or reference where I can start researching?
Come and talk to me. Or Diane, or Molly, or Bruce, but I will tell you, we're working right now with two neighborhoods that are not, and Tim's a good person to talk to about this too. We're working with two neighborhoods that are not happy with what they're seeing in their neighborhoods or near their neighborhoods about the expansion of the University of Colorado Springs. So what that's doing is saying to these neighborhoods that haven't really been active as neighborhood associations for 20 years, I'll try to make this brief, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that they're saying we need to get together and we need to have an organization. We need to be paying attention to what's going on around us in our neighborhood. We're having a meeting with one of these, Craigmore neighborhood, tonight at 5:30, followed by a meeting at 6 with the developers of the Bates School, causing the neighborhoods concern. But I think, the best way to do this is to start with a handful of people that you know well who share your concern. And we'd be glad to sit down with those folks. Como would be glad to sit down with those folks and talk about how you organize a neighborhood from that point. Thank you.
Does the HOA do the work, or you want the government to do the work, right? The city should be doing the work.
Well, our city is unique in that, I'm sorry, Brandy, did you want to answer that?
No, go right ahead. You've been more familiar with neighborhoods per se than I am.
Our city is unique on the Front Range. Larry Larson can probably speak to this pretty well too, in that we are one of the few large cities on the Front Range that does not have a department that deals, the Department of Neighborhood Affairs or Neighborhood Activity, or Neighborhood Systems, something like that. And
It's like streets and roads and gutters, right?
streets and roads and gutters are certainly in the city's problem, yes.
And is that the issue here?
Well, I'd like to-
OA too.
As far as what I heard her say, the issue was fences and yards and people's private property. Is that correct?
And sidewalks.
Sidewalks is definitely city, depending upon
Both,
whether it was
maybe.
public or private at the time it was developed. So a combination of the neighbors, the neighborhood, and then the city's involvement, so a little of both.
So Brandy, I heard you say that in 2011, you were elected with 33,000 votes.
Correct.
And, which would have made you the front runner in 2015, with 33. I don't think anybody got 33,000 votes in the city council. Close.
That's exactly what
Close,
We've got
but
36.
36,
36.
okay, 36. So, what do you think happened between the elections of I'm using 11, not 13, I'm using 11 to 15. What do you think happened in that 4 years?
I was asked that question a lot last Tuesday. My personal opinion, for the record, is that I think what happened is that after the election in 2011 and the discourse that made it into the paper about the mayor and the city council not getting along, and then in 2013 that discourse got even worse, I think it just disenfranchised people. They didn't want to have anything to do with it, or in any way wanted to be blamed for what was happening at City Hall. If I don't vote, I can't be part of the problem at that point, which isn't very helpful in my humble opinion. It really is. There are good people that love this city and want to serve this city, but after you see it week after week after week, you don't even want to hear about it. I mean, first of all, that's why I asked the question, who knew there was an election last week? So when I ran the first time, most people didn't know. What are you running for, city council? Okay, what's that? Okay, we'll cross that bridge. Well, the election's in November, right? Why are you starting so early? Well, the election is in April. So I think one thing that might be helpful, and Dave and I have discussed this, is reaching the subject of moving our elections from April to November when people actually know that there's an election taking place, as opposed to the learning curve that has to take place to simply explain to them we have an April election. So I think if we had more city elections on November and more information all at the same time, yes, it's more for the public to sort through, but at least step one, they know there's an election. And then after that, then you can say, here are your city candidates, here are council members, this is what the mayor's candidates are standing for. I think that would be very helpful.
I guess the other thing, as long as we're sitting here, and I imagine that most of the people in this room are fairly like-minded in that they are politically astute. They do know that if you don't vote, you're not helping the situation at all. But I also think about high school seniors. I think about people